Hello, my name is Tivy. I'm a Wapello County 4-H member, and this is my 8th year in 4-H. Imagine you're a 12-year-old and the social media of the day gets you in touch with a very charismatic person who shares with you his vision and how you can claim what is rightfully yours. All you have to do is fight for him. You may think I'm talking about Joseph Kony and his use of child soldiers in Uganda from 1986 to the present. However, children soldiers is nothing new. In fact, one of the best recorded cases of child soldiers occurred 800 years ago during an event called the Children's Crusade. The Children's Crusade occurred when a 12-year-old shepherd boy named Stephen claimed he had received a vision telling him to raise an army of children and to travel to the Holy Land to reclaim a supposedly holy relic called the True Cross. The group, which according to historyguy.org was some 30,000, traveled to Marseille, as they are here, and after receiving the blessing of friendly priests, ran out to a harbor to try and see the sea part for them as Stephen said it would. When it failed to do so, some of the group turned back the way they'd come. George stayed. These children quickly did the offer of two local merchants, according to legend, Hugh the Iron and William the Pig, who offered the boys free transit to the Holy Land in exchange for absolutely nothing, or so they thought. The children were not to be heard from again for another 18 years, when a man turned up claiming to be one of the children from the crusade. He revealed then the course of the journey. Bad weather had sunk two of the ships, and the other five, on their arrival to Egypt, had been sold into slavery. These children learned what all child soldiers eventually learn. But the promises of their leader proved to be false. It's usually too late to get out. Unfortunately, however, the use of child soldiers did not end there. In fact, one of the greatest villains in history used child soldiers. The Hitlerjunge, or Hitler Youth, was a group of boys aged 10 to 18 who served Hitler. It originally began in 1926 as a compulsory Boy Scout-like organization with the of getting Hitler into power. During that time, they, like many other Germans, fell under Hitler's superiority. When he invaded Poland in 1936, the mission of the Hitler Youth changed to being to defend the fatherland, a task they ended up doing more and more as Germany lowered its draft age when Hitler lost men. The soldiers of the Hitler Youth ended up serving as anti-aircraft gunners on the in keeping Germany from being bombed, and also in the Volkssturm, or People's Army, in the final defense of Germany and on the notorious Russian front. Here's a child being shown how to operate a machine gun for the Volkssturm, and which brings us to a very similar event which occurred in Cambodia when Khmer Rouge seized power in 1975. This time it was under the leadership of Pol Pot, who, upon his seizure of power, slew all teachers in order to return the country to year zero. This allowed him to indoctrinate the children with his idea of utopia. These children were virtually enslaved by his forces and, in some cases, forced to fight, even kill members of their own family or face death themselves, which gave rise to the quote from Hingna S. Nagore, author of the Cambodian Odyssey, who wrote, "The most dangerous thing is a 14-year-old with an AK-47. Khmer Rouge's rule ended when Vietnamese troops forced Pol Pot from the capital of Cambodia. After the Khmer Rouge, the United Nations created the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, a treaty on how children should be properly treated, which has been signed and ratified by all member nations except two. Even that did not end the use of child soldiers, however. In 1997, Teens Hutu led a group of teen guerrilla soldiers called God's Army, which held 700 and 800 patients of a hospital and staff prisoner for 22 hours. Also, prior to 2004, The Sudan People's Liberation Army used children as young as 7, such as this one here, to fight for the liberation of South Sudan. Groups in Latin America, like the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia and the National Liberation Army, strangely also from Colombia, use child soldiers as well. Which brings us to modern day. Though the definition has changed over the years, today, according to UNICEF, a child soldier is defined as any child, boy or girl under 18 years of age, who is part of any kind of regular or irregular armed force or armed group in any capacity, including but not limited to cooks, porters, managers, and anyone accompanying such groups other than family members. It includes boys and girls recruited for sexual purposes and or forced marriage. The definition, therefore, does not just refer to a child who has carried a weapon or is carrying a weapon. That's taken from the Cape Town Principles, which UNICEF adopted in 1997. By this definition, the BBC has a number of child soldiers at approximately 300,000 today, located primarily in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. In conclusion, I have shown you that child soldiers are nothing new and have existed for at least 800 years from the Children's Crusade. Since then, they've been used by the Hitler Youth, Khmer Rouge, God's Army, the Sudan People's Liberation Army, and others. So, what can you do to help? Well, there are a number of legitimate organizations out there, such as Soldier International and Amnesty International, bring about awareness on the problem. Be wary of scammers wishing to pry on your sentiments and take your money. Sadly, donations to legitimate organizations will help educate people about the exploitation of children and save some children, as long as there are people like Stefan Hitler, Pol Pot, and Joseph Kony willing to use youth as a weapon. Child soldiers will continue into the future. This is my bibliography with some informational, where I got my informational sources and my pictorial sources. Are there any questions? The question was, why did I choose this topic to share? Well, the Joseph Kony was plastered all over the news and my school during the year, so I had that I was interested in finding out about. And also I'm on my school's history bowl team, so I was looking up the anniversaries for history bowl questions we're probably going to get this year. And I came across the Children's Crusade, and I never heard anything about it, so I looked it up. And it was a very similar event, so I started looking through history for major occurrences, and it slowly turned into this presentation. The question was, that all but signed the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. That is correct. The two nations that haven't signed it are Somalia, which is a notorious user, which haven't ratified it, is Somalia, which is a notorious user of child soldiers, and much to probably the surprise of everyone here, the United States. The Senate has not ratified. They agree with all the amendments, so they failed to ratify it numerous times. The question is, are they still working on it? Yes and no. It's still there. There are still people who feel it's important, but it's taken a backseat to other things like the economy, the farm bill, etc. Any other questions? If there are no other questions, this concludes my presentation. Thank you.